Namaskar. Welcome to Melodyscape. Music is the tie that binds the world together. Every culture has its own form of music, be it Western classical that emanated from Western Europe, African rhythms and harmony, South American tangos, or even the modern rock, pop, hip-hop. It's a language that crosses all boundaries. Melodyscape, a series of multiple episodes, hopes to expand the knowledge and appreciation of Indian classical music, specifically the North Indian style. In this first episode today, we will expand on concepts and terms of Hindustani classical music that we hope to use in the subsequent episodes. We will then choose one rag, and you'll find out what the rag is. One rag for every episode, and tell you about its nuances and its beauty. We'll choose some popular songs and also some classical music items that will be performed by local artists. Indian classical music and the musical tradition in India has developed through complex traditions and transitions between people of various cultures and races over the ages. It started with folk music, celebrating harvests, weddings, seasons, moods, and also has two very rich classical music traditions, Carnatic, the South Indian tradition, and Hindustani, the North Indian tradition. Hindustani music is based in two basic concepts, rag, the melodic component, and tal, the rhythmic component. Rag creates a framework within which a composition is based and explored. Tal, the rhythmic cyclical patterns of time, also creates an atmosphere together with the rag, which creates something living and magical. Inherently, Hindustani music is very spiritual. Rag means that which enriches pleasure, enriches you. And its root unit is a swar, a note. Swa, the self, and ra means shining forth. So swar is a radiance of the inner self. Using a rag, a person creates an atmosphere that captures him and his audience. And it's not just music alone, but the radiance of the person that embodies the art that creates this beautiful rapport between the audience and the performer. With us in the studio today, we have Nachiket Sharma. Namaskar. A renowned vocalist of the Bay Area and also a popular Hindustani music teacher. On my left, on the harmonium, we have Vivek Datarji. Namaskar. He is very well known and has accompanied a lot of visiting senior artists in the Bay Area. On the tabla, we have Nihar Paranjpe. Namaskar, a budding upcoming artist. And on the tanpur behind us, we have two students, Nilija and Tarun. Nachiketji, to start, can you tell us a bit about the history of Hindustani music?
Indian classical music itself goes back to the Vedas. The Vedas, the holy scriptures in Hinduism. On several accounts, by several accounts, they go back 8 to 10,000 years. Amazing. So Indian classical music has evolved since those times. Over the ages, as you mentioned earlier, several peoples, several cultures and several influences have shaped what we know as Hindustani classical music today. The Vindhyas, the mountain ranges that run through central India, they pretty much divide India physically. The north of the Vindhyas, developed what is known as the Hindustani, the North Indian classical tradition, and primarily the South Indian tradition stayed south of the Vindhyas, the Carnatic tradition. Overall, Indian classical music really was devotional, and it was known as the Dhrupad tradition. That
sung
several
in the temples.
That's correct, and in praise of gods and goddesses, and that lasted for several. It's
still
alive,
exists,
but its history goes back several thousands of years. With the invasion of the Muslims, the landscape changed considerably, and started a tradition known as the Khyal tradition.
That was created in the courts of kings and emperors,
That's
right?
correct. And the Khyal tradition is the more popular version of the Hindustani tradition that we know today.
Okay.
Over the years, several personalities, several musicians, composers, educationalists, they have shaped what is Hindustani music today.
So tell us something about who these personalities were that impacted the tradition.
Yeah, so the earliest recorded documentation of Indian classical music is by Sharngdeva in the 13th century. And in the 16th century, we had Tansen, who was a very famous musician, composer, teacher.
In the court of the Mughal king Akbar.
Akbar, that's correct. And he had several students, he made several compositions, and he has started a tradition that is alive even today. In the past 150 to 200 years, we have such great personalities as V.D. Paluskar, Bhatkhande, S.N. Ratanjankar, such great personalities who started schools of students, who were great performers themselves.
And they were theoreticians, right?
Exactly.
They created the rules and the boundaries of the...
That's correct, as we know them today. We also had great musicians who developed great students. We had Ustad Alauddin Khan, who was the teacher of Pandit Ravi Shankar, and Ustad Ali Akbar Khan.
So he's also the father of Ustad Ali Akbar
That's
Khan.
correct, that's correct. And then we had Aladia Khan, who was the teacher of Mallikarjun Mansur and such great people.
Wow.
We
had Bade Ghulam Ali Khan.
We had Bade Ghulam Ali Khan, Amir Khan, several people. They have really shaped the landscape of Hindustani music today.
Very nice. So, just talking about today, how would you compare Hindustani music with Western classical music or jazz or any of the genres that are popular in this part of the world?
Yeah, Indian classical music and Western classical music, they're very similar at the same time that they are very different. So they are similar in the way that they have they have 7 notes.
Okay.
The do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. In the Indian tradition, you have the sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni. You have notes. In the Western tradition, a note is typically, generally speaking, a note on the keyboard, a key on the keyboard, or a particular frequency on a string. Whereas in the Indian tradition, a note is just more than a note on the keyboard. It is the note itself, as well as inflections around it and approaches to the note. For example, sa is the very first note. So sa is the basic note, but depending on the composition, depending on the rag, depending on the mood, you would have things like sa or sa. So it's a little more than just a note on the keyboard.
I heard someone explain that very beautifully once. They said that in a Western classical tradition, a note is a line you walk on, whereas in Hindustani music, it's a track that guides you.
That's correct. That's correct. It's more than just a line. You have a little more leeway than that.
And do the scales also, are they similar?
Yes, indeed. In the Western tradition, you have scales like the Phrygian scale and the Lydian scale. In the Indian tradition also, you have very similar, but you have a larger range, larger number. In the Carnatic tradition, we have what are known as Melkartas, or really 72 Melkartas or scales, which are really combinations and permutations of the notes going up and down, going up and down. In the Hindustani tradition, you have the Thaat system, which was, by the way, formulated by Bhatkhande, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. The Thaat system, there are 10 Thats, and each Thaat has a set of notes that goes up and down.
So, but the 7 notes going up and 7 coming down with a combination of sharps and flats.
That's correct. That's correct. Let me give you an example. There's a Thaat called Kalyan. Kalyan goes like this. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa, dha, sharp ma.
Ma.
The fourth note that was sharp.
Right.
Now that is a scale. That's a scale kalyan.
Okay.
You have 10 such scales with different permutations.
And these are fixed. These are 10
These are
fixed.
fixed, correct.
Okay.
Now a rag
Uh-huh.
is more than just a scale.
Okay.
For example, there is a rag Yaman, which
Okay.
belongs to the Kalyan That.
Okay.
Now a rag has a scale associated with it. It has a time of day associated with it. So there are times of day: early morning, mid morning, late morning, afternoon, and so on.
And a mood also sometimes.
And then there is a mood associated with it. So
Okay.
it's happy and sad and romantic and so on.
Okay.
Then there are the the primary note and the secondary note, which are known as the Vadi and the Samvadi. These are notes that really are very important to that rag.
I see.
Not
And-
singing those would not make that rag.
Okay, so a simple concept. You talked about a scale, which is the Kalyan That. You talked about a rag. You could have more than one rag for each That.
That's correct.
And every rag and the That have ascending scale and a descending scale.
Yeah.
Those are called Aro.
That's correct. The ascending scale is the Aro and the descending is the Avro.
Okay. And we talked about the sharp Madhyam. So the word sharp, we call them Tivra, right? So we have a Tivra, which is
Tivra,
sharp.
Shuddha,
And Shuddh is the normal. And the flats are called Komal.
Komal. That's
Komal
correct.
swar. So you were going to talk about the Rag
Yeah,
Yaman?
so the rag Yaman, which belongs to the Kalyan That, is a little more than just the scale going up and down like Kalyan.
Okay.
They're also known as pakkads or catchphrases or unique phrases that really define that rag. I'll give you an
see.
example. So in Yaman, the scale going up and down for the rag
Aro,
Yaman,
Avro.
the Aro Avro. Ne re ga re ga ma pa ma dha ni sa sa ni dha pa ma ga re ga ma pa re sa.
Wow. So this is the Aro and the Avro.
Of Yaman,
Okay.
which belongs to the Kalyan That.
Okay.
Now there is another That called Bhairav,
Okay.
which is, by the way, a morning That, morning rag.
Okay.
Now the That Bhairav goes like this: Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa.
So this is the That.
The That Bhairav.
And it
Now
has
that-
a lot of flats in it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now the Rag Bhairav is sa re ga ma pa dha pa da ni sa
Wow.
re sa ni dha pa ma pa ga ma re.
Wow.
Now
So
that is a Rag Bhairav.
But this is the Aro and Avro. I know you mentioned the Pakad, a catchphrase, or sometimes I've heard Chalan, which
Chalan.
is the style of walking of the Rag.
Really, the Chalan is a walkthrough of the rag. What I told you is really the Chalan. The walkthrough is
Bhairav.
really a very quick introduction to the rag itself.
Wow, kya baat hai. So Bhairav and Yaman, the two rags that you demonstrated, I noticed had 7 ascending notes and 7 descending notes. But
That's
that's not necessary,
Not
right?
necessarily the case. We have pentatonic rags which have just 5 notes going up, 5 notes coming down, or
Or-
5 going up, 7 coming down. Yeah.
I see.
So an example of a pentatonic rag that has 5 notes in the That Bhairav
Uh-huh.
is a rag called Vibhas.
Okay.
Vibhas skips the ma and the ni.
So it's 5 notes
5
going
notes.
up and 5 coming down.
So
okay.
it goes like this: Sa re ga pa dha sa sa dha pa ga re sa.
Kya baat.
That's
Wow.
Vibhas.
So just to go over the concepts of the melodic components, we talked about the That, which is a scale. There are 10 Thats that have been defined by Bhatkhande. The rag, there can be more than one rag, but it has to be based within a scale. And you talked about Vadi, Samvadi, Aro, Avro,
That's
Shuddh, Tivra, Komal, and also the fact that rags can be sung time of day, and they have certain catchphrases called pakkars.
Pakkars, yes.
That is very good to know. Along with that, we have a lot of percussion, right? So tell me the concept of tal.
Yes, so just like in the the melodic component, you have the rag and the thats and everything like that. In the rhythmic component, you have the tal.
Okay.
A tal is really more than just a cycle of beats. So the foundation of a tal is really a cycle of a certain number of beats.
Okay.
For example, there is a tal called a teen tal. A teen tal consists of 16 beats.
Okay.
Right, and it's not just 16 beats going
haywire
and coming back in a circle. It's not. It is very structured in the sense that the 16 beats are compartmentalized into 4 beats of 4.
Four sections
of 4 beats each. So you have 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
Wow.
Now what Nihar has here in front of him is the tabla.
Okay.
And a tabla is really the most popular percussion instrument for Hindustani musicians. Now on the tabla, each section of the drum produces a different kind of sound, and so each sound has a note associated with it,
or a word
or a syllable associated with it.
Okay.
So in the teen tal, you have 16 beats. So the 16 beats are dha dhin dhin dha dha dhin dhin dha dha tin tin ta ta dhin dhin dha. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 16 1. Back to 1.
Kya baat hai. So I noticed that it seems that 1 is very important, and 9, 10, 11, 12 sounded different.
That's correct. So the first note, or note number 1, or bowl number 1, the first beat is known as the sum. And the ninth beat is known as the khali.
Okay.
So really the khali is a cue, the cue for you to come back, so you know how many beats have passed and how many are remaining.
Okay, I see.
That's the khali.
And when we explore a rag, we always try and come back to the sum.
Right. That's so a song, a composition based on a particular rag has the
tal component
very much as part of it.
Okay. Something else I've heard is that we have different tempos, right? When you start a program, you start relatively slow, and then you create an atmosphere and it goes fast, and you finally climax at a very fast speed most of the time.
Yeah,
right?
That's right. So a teen tal can have any tal really. So teen tal, as an example, can have varying speeds.
Okay.
So you have the very slow, or the what's known as the vilambit, right? And then you have the madhyalay, or mid speed, mid tempo. Then you have the drut, which is the really fast and sort of like the climax to the performance.
I see.
So a fast teen tal would be 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 dha dhin dhin dha dha dhin dhin dha dha tin tin ta ta dhin dhin dha dha dhin dhin dha dha dhin dhin dha dha tin tin ta ta dhin dhin dha dha.
Wow, kya baat hai.
So this would be a fast.
Okay. So I know you mentioned this is a 16 beat. We have 10 beat tals and 12 beat tals and other.
That's correct. So we have several varieties of tals themselves.
In fact, some very well-known artists also perform in 11 and a half or 9 and a quarter.
So there are the mainstream tals and the eclectic tals. Yes, certainly.
So the ek tal is the 12 beat.
Yeah. So like I said, there's so many different kinds of tals. Ek tal is another tal. It has 12 beats.
And we can demonstrate a slow tempo, vilambit.
Yeah, vilambit would be a little too slow, I would think.
Okay.
So the ek tal, for example, in the drut, or the fast tempo, would be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 dhin dhin dhage trika tunna kat dhin dhage trika dhinna dhin dhin dhage trika tunna kat dhin dhage trika dhinna dhin.
Kya baat.
And so on.
Wow. So now that we started talking about the tabla, can you tell us something about the instruments that we have here today?
Yeah. So tabla, this is a percussion instrument. The what Vivek has there is the harmonium, which is the melodic accompaniment to a vocal or really a Hindustani performance. So harmonium is nothing more than a keyboard. It's sort of like an accordion, but not quite. It has a keyboard on it, and it plays the various.
And it is an accompanying instrument.
It is an accompanying instrument. It provides melodic accompaniment to the performer.
I see.
And it's usually used for vocal performance as opposed to instrumental performance.
And instrumental performances would have a tabla, and that's it.
That's pretty much just the tabla and the instrument itself.
But what about these two?
This is the instrument that Neelija and Tarun are playing is known as tambura or the tanpura, and it's really a drone instrument. It provides the bass, the key in which the performer is singing. So it has a set of 4 strings that the player just strums. And it is not an instrument that is played all by itself. You don't have a tambura concert, for example. It is a drone instrument. So Neelija, that's all there is to it.
And it sort of creates an atmosphere for the performance and provides the key.
It provides the key for the performer. Yeah.
So for performances, we are obviously sitting on the floor over here, and we have a bada khyal, a chota khyal. What is the norm of a performance? What are the pieces that we talk about?
So all Indian classical performances are performed sitting down. Right? And everybody sits down and on stage. So the performer in the Hindustani style, the performer starts with a slow rendition, a slow introduction to that rag that he or she is performing. And it's known as an alap.
I see.
And alap is really, as I said, a slow introduction to what the performer is
to the rag that he's going to perform.
Yeah, that's correct. And then he or she starts with the bada khyal or the vilambit.
The slow tempo.
The slow tempo, a composition, a song in a very slow tempo. So in teen tal, if the performer is singing in teen tal, that the slow could be as the speed could be as slow as dha, thin, and so on.
Wow.
And go on for. And then the tempo slowly increases. And so does the performer's singing tempo, and then there are fast passages and then slow passages, fast passages, and then there is the interaction between the harmonium player and the tabla player alone, with the performer taking sort of a back seat,
giving them a chance to shine forth.
Yeah, so all these happen.
Very nice. So I know that we talked about all the concepts here today, but I also wanted to understand a bit about other instruments and other performances. So Hindustani classical music, the rag and the tal, when you perform, you can have a vocalist rendering a performance, but we can also have instrumental artists like Ravi Shankar playing the sitar.
Playing the sitar, that's right.
Okay. And some of the other modern artists that are popular or top of the line these days are, we mentioned Ravi Shankar.
That's correct. There is a sarod that Ustad Ali Akbar Khan plays.
Right.
There's a flute, the bansuri, so the bamboo flute that has been very nicely popularized by such greats as Pannalal Ghosh and Hari Prasad Chaurasia.
And the santoor, which is
a 100-stringed instrument, very very popular thanks to Shiv Kumar Sharma.
Okay, and some vocalists really top of the line today.
Yeah, there are people like Bhimsen Joshi and Gangubai Hangal who have really defined the high standards of Hindustani music today.
Right. And through Guru Shishya Parampara, they are creating a set of students that are performers in their own.
That's a good point to bring up. The Guru Shishya Parampara, or the Guru, who's the teacher, teaches his or her students, who are the Shishyas, and the Parampara is a tradition So the guru passes on his or her knowledge to the shishya then becomes the guru after some time, and so on.
I see.
Right.
So the younger generation like Ashwini Bhide or some of the others have learned through the Guru Shishya Parampara.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. One more thing I must mention is that in any Indian classical performance, the performer is the performer as well as a composer simultaneously.
Okay.
So he or she is bound to the grammar and the rules of that the framework of that particular rag that the performer is performing, but at the same time making creations and
exploring,
improvising extemporaneously.
I see.
At the same time that he or she is sticking to the bounds, the norms, the rules, the context, the grammar of that particular rag.
So it's a